The African wilderness is both breathtaking and merciless, a place where nature reigns supreme and danger lurks just beneath the surface, sometimes quite literally. For Dr. Richard K. Root, a man who had dedicated his life to saving others, the wild had something far more sinister in store. A world-renowned infectious disease specialist, mentor, and humanitarian, Dr. Root had traveled across the globe, tackling the deadliest bacterial infections and mentoring the next generation of medical professionals. But on a seemingly peaceful day in 2006, his extraordinary journey came to a horrifying and violent end. Dragged into the depths of the Limpopo River by a giant prehistoric predator. At 68 years old, Dr. Root was far from retired. His passion for medicine and education remained as strong as ever. When the University of Pennsylvania's Infectious Disease Department extended an invitation for him to help train doctors in Botswana, he didn't hesitate. The project was crucial. Botswana was in the grips of a devastating HIV/AIDS epidemic, and Dr. Root was there to help equip local medical teams with the knowledge and skills to combat it. His assignment would last 2 months, and in that short time, he was determined to make a difference. But amidst the hard work, there was also time to take in the stunning beauty of the region, a land teeming with wildlife, ancient landscapes, and vast rivers where predators still ruled. And so, on March 19, 2006, Dr. Root and his wife, Rita, embarked on what was meant to be a simple, guided canoe safari through the Tule Nature Reserve, a decision that would become his last. The canoes drifted peacefully down the Limpopo River, the soft murmur of water mixing with the distant calls of birds and the rustling of leaves in the towering riverbanks. The sun was bright overhead, glistening off the surface, painting the illusion of a serene and tranquil moment. But beneath the murky depths, something was watching, waiting. Dr. Root sat in the lead canoe, accompanied by a seasoned guide, a man who had likely seen his fair share of Africa's dangers. His wife, Rita, followed in another canoe, capturing moments of their adventure on camera. The photos she took just minutes before the attack showed Dr. Root at ease, completely unaware that he was about to become prey. Then the river erupted. A monstrous crocodile, measuring between 13 and 15 feet, launched itself from the depths. In a single, calculated move, the reptile lunged onto the canoe, sinking its dagger-like teeth into Dr. Root's body. The canoe shook violently, but did not overturn. The beast didn't need to capsize it. It had already won. Within seconds, Dr. Root was ripped from his seat and dragged into the water. A scream echoed across the river. His wife, just yards behind, could only watch in horror as her husband disappeared beneath the surface. And then, silence. Panic set in. The guide and other members of the group searched frantically, scanning the water for any sign of movement, but the river had already swallowed him whole. In that instant, Dr. Root, a man who had spent decades fighting deadly diseases, saving lives, and training future doctors, had become nothing more than another victim of Africa's unforgiving wilderness. Word spread quickly. Authorities and local trackers launched a full-scale search, scouring the banks of the Limpopo River for any sign of his body. Days passed. Nothing. For 4 long days, hope dwindled. His wife clung to the desperate possibility that somehow he had survived. Then, on the 4th day, the river gave up its secret. Dr. Root's lifeless body was found near the site of the initial attack, his remains bearing the unmistakable signs of a crocodile's ferocious grip. The man, who had spent a lifetime fighting death, had lost his final battle to a silent, ancient killer. Dr. Richard K. Root was no ordinary man. He was a pioneer in infectious disease research, a respected educator, and a mentor to countless physicians across the world. His work in sepsis management and bacterial infections helped shape the modern medical understanding of some of the deadliest illnesses known to humankind. But even the greatest minds are no match for nature's raw and unpredictable brutality. His death sent shockwaves through the medical community. Tributes poured in from colleagues, students, and institutions worldwide. He had spent a lifetime saving lives, Yet in the end, no one could save him. His tragic death serves as a haunting reminder of the unrelenting power of the natural world. In the wilderness, even the most accomplished, intelligent, and respected individuals are still just another part of the food chain. The Nile crocodile is a master of ambush, a prehistoric killer that has remained unchanged for millions of years. With crushing jaws capable of exerting over 5,000 pounds of pressure per square inch, and the terrifying death roll, a brutal part, it is one of the most feared predators on the planet. Each year, hundreds of people fall victim to these ambush hunters, especially in the rivers of Botswana, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. But it is rare for someone as high-profile as Dr. Root to be among them. Perhaps that's what makes his death so haunting. It wasn't a disease, an accident, or old age that claimed him. It was something far more primal, a silent predator in the water, a moment of peace shattered in an instant, a man of science, swallowed by the wild. And in the end, no cure, no knowledge, no expertise could save him. For over a decade, Thailand's Koh Tao Island has been wrapped in an eerie mystery, earning it the grim nicknames Death Island and Murder Island after at least 11 tourists met untimely and unexplained ends. But despite its spooky reputation, 31-year-old Theo Bailey and his longtime girlfriend, Chantal Zeri, decided to roll the dice and take a vacation there in March 2024. The couple, seemingly unaware, or perhaps unfazed, by the island's dark history, were last seen enjoying drinks at a buzzing local bar. The party scene was straight out of a wild travel brochure. Tourists laughing over bucket-sized cocktails, some inhaling hippie crack, aka nitrous oxide, others dancing like they had no tomorrow. And then, just like a plot twist in a horror movie, Bailey vanished without a trace. One moment, he was part of the festivities. The next, he was gone. No one could pinpoint exactly when he slipped away, and whether he told anyone where he was going remains a mystery. But what's certain is that as the night faded and the music stopped, Bailey was nowhere to be found. The search for him ended the next afternoon, but not in the way anyone had hoped. Instead of a sheepish, hungover Bailey stumbling back with a wild story to tell, his lifeless body was found lying in a shallow drainage ditch near the Rocktopus Diving Center by Siri Beach. From the state of things, it was clear he had been there for hours, meaning he likely died while the party was still raging on. Even eerier, his phone was missing. Whether stolen or lost remains unclear. Authorities wasted no time launching an investigation, blocking off the area to preserve evidence while forensic experts combed through the scene. Bailey's body was transported to a hospital for a detailed examination. Yet, frustratingly, the results of his autopsy have yet to be made public. And then came the head-scratcher. Despite the ominous circumstances surrounding his disappearance and death, Koh Tao Police Superintendent Lieutenant Colonel Chuk Chae-Suech told reporters that no foul play was suspected. According to the official version of events, Bailey simply wandered off, accidentally fell into a shallow waterway, and tragically lost his life. With no signs of violence and no arrests made, the case was quickly ruled an unfortunate accident. While authorities seemed content with their conclusion, Bailey's girlfriend was left shattered. Heartbroken and grieving, she took to social media with an emotional tribute, calling him her best friend, her angel, and the love of her life. 10 years together would never be enough, she wrote, promising to carry his memory with her forever. She reminisced about their silly adventures and cherished moments, a heartbreaking reminder that her world had changed overnight. But outside of her grief, whispers of conspiracy swirled through online forums and expat communities. Koh Tao, after all, has a murky past riddled with unsolved deaths, suspicious disappearances, and allegations of cover-ups. Some believe the island's powerful local figures have a vested interest in keeping its lucrative tourism industry untouched by scandal, brushing such cases under the rug to avoid bad press. Could Bailey's case be another one of those conveniently closed files, or was it truly just a tragic accident? In the end, the truth about what really happened to Theo Bailey may never be known. Koh Tau's shadowy reputation remains intact, and for every question that lingers, there are no real answers. Tourists still flock to its sun-kissed shores, blissfully unaware, or choosing to ignore, the eerie legacy that lingers beneath the paradise exterior. Perhaps some stories are meant to stay buried, much like the secrets of Death Island itself. Chelsea Grim, a 32-year-old from San Diego, California, disappeared on September 28, 2023, while on a cross-country road trip. The last time anyone saw her, she was in Williams, Arizona, and the circumstances surrounding her vanishing remain as puzzling as ever. Her case is currently listed as missing, and the mystery continues to leave everyone scratching their heads. Chelsea set out on September 24, 2023, with plans to attend a wedding in Connecticut. Originally, she planned to fly, but when the airline wouldn't let her bring her pet bearded dragon, Roz, or Roxy, depending on the day, she decided to hit the road instead. Talk about dedication to your pet. She cruised through Phoenix, Arizona on September 27th, where she met up with her sister and a friend. However, the next day, she canceled plans for lunch with the same friend. Later that day, Chelsea was spotted at a motel in Seligman, Arizona, trying to book a room. She was described as acting a little disoriented, even trying to pay with euros instead of US dollars. Now, that's a sign something might not be right. She called her parents from the motel, letting them know her trip was taking longer than expected, and she wouldn't be making it to the wedding after all. She mentioned she was going to camp nearby for a few days before heading back to California. On September 28th, things took another strange turn when an officer found Chelsea's car parked near a war memorial in Williams, Arizona. She explained to the officer that she'd gotten emotional after taking photos for a lost soldier project and didn't want to drive while upset. The officer, being helpful, suggested some safe spots to camp, including a Love's truck stop. By September 30th, a woodcutter spotted Chelsea camping in her car near Ash Fork, Arizona. She didn't seem to be in any distress and appeared fine, but after that, silence. No calls, no texts, no social media posts. Then, on October 3rd, hunters stumbled upon Chelsea's white 2019 Ford Escape, abandoned on a Forest Service road in the Kaibab National Forest, northeast of Ash Fork. The car had 2 flat tires but no sign of Chelsea. The following day, her parents filed a missing person report with Phoenix PD, unable to reach her. When authorities checked the car, they found Chelsea's wallet, phone, sleeping bag, and bearded dragon were missing, but some of her clothes and a camera were left behind. The car was locked, and there were no signs of a struggle. Since her disappearance, there's been no activity on her phone, bank account, or social media. No one can figure out what happened, and police haven't found any evidence of foul play. The case is at a dead end, leaving a lot of room for speculation. Some believe Chelsea might have been going through a mental health crisis, given her confused behavior. After all, a photographer wouldn't leave their camera behind unless something was off. Others suspect she might have met someone, possibly even an abductor, and point to the euros she tried to pay with as a clue. Then there's the theory that outlaws could have deflated her tires and taken advantage of the situation to mug or kidnap her. Desperate for answers, Chelsea's family hired a private detective to help with the search, but so far, no new leads have turned up. The mystery of Chelsea Grim's disappearance still has everyone puzzled. Her family and friends continue to hold on to hope that one day she'll come home safely and the truth will finally come to light. A seasoned safari ranger, a towering beast in a violent rage, and a tragic ending no one saw coming. In December 2018, Madikwe Game Reserve in South Africa became the scene of a horrifying tragedy when a bull elephant, overcome with uncontrollable aggression, broke through a fence and stormed into a tourist area at Leopard Rock Lodge. Mark Lautenbach, a highly respected guide, wildlife photographer, and one of the most skilled rangers in the country, stepped forward to defuse the situation. But in the unforgiving world of the wild, even the most experienced hands can be powerless against nature's fury. The elephant, a 6-ton bull in musth, a state of heightened aggression caused by surging testosterone levels, was in no mood to be confronted. Witnesses say the massive creature fixated on Mark and, within seconds, charged with deadly intent. The ground trembled under its weight as it bore down on him. Before anyone could react, Mark was struck and trampled repeatedly, suffering catastrophic injuries. Musth makes bull elephants some of the most dangerous animals on Earth, flooding them with up to 6 times their normal testosterone levels, turning them into unstoppable forces of rage. Even female elephants in heat aren't safe during this period, let alone a human trying to intervene. One local expert, speaking under anonymity, described the scene with chilling clarity. Mark was one of the best, a man who understood the wild like few others. But this was something no one could stop. That elephant had made up its mind. Despite Mark's experience and knowledge, nothing could be done once the attack began. The beast left destruction in its wake before rangers made the grim decision to put it down, fearing it would strike again. For the safari community, Mark's loss was more than just a tragedy. It was a stark reminder that no matter how much we learn about nature, it remains an unpredictable, merciless force. 17-year-old Mike Mansholt was the kind of teenager who craved adventure. Whether it was paddling through the rugged waters of the Yukon River with his dad or setting off on solo trips, he lived for the thrill. So when he jetted off to Malta in the summer of 2016, it was supposed to be another exciting chapter in his journey toward independence. This was his first vacation alone. No parents, no family, just him, his rented bike, and a GoPro to capture every moment. His girlfriend was also in Malta for a language course, and they enjoyed a few fun-filled days together before she flew back to Germany. But Mike wasn't done exploring. With his gray backpack, a few €100, a power bank, a straw hat, and his trusty GoPro, he was ready to make the most of his time. On the morning of July 18, 2016, he sent his dad a WhatsApp voice message, chatting about the steep roads and promising to send a photo soon. Then he set off on his rented bike. That picture never came. A day passed. Mike didn't return his bike. By July 22nd, he missed his flight back home to Germany. Alarm bells started ringing. His family reported him missing, and a frantic search began. 8 days later, on July 26th, his body was found at the base of Dingley Cliffs, a staggering 29-meter drop, about the height of an 11-story building. His rented bike dangled from a bush above, while his sunglasses and shoes were scattered nearby. But something was missing. His backpack, his GoPro, and his other belongings had vanished. Authorities quickly labeled it an accident, claiming Mike had fallen. His father, Bernd Mansholt, was taken to the scene, where he was told Mike had broken his back in 2 places. The grief was unbearable, but at least the family had some closure. Or so they thought. When Bernd visited the morgue, expecting to confirm the details of his son's tragic fall, a disturbing truth emerged. There were no fractures on Mike's body. The bike, supposedly involved in a high fall, had only a flat tire and a slightly misaligned seat, hardly the damage one would expect from such a great height. Then came the even more shocking revelation. Mike's organs were missing. When his body was returned to Germany for a second autopsy, it was discovered that only his left kidney, diaphragm, spleen, and large intestine remained. His body weighed just 32 kilograms, 70 pounds, and despite Maltese authorities insisting he had been embalmed, German specialists found no evidence of it. Even more bizarrely, there were no signs of rodent bites or natural decomposition that would explain the missing organs. The contradictions kept piling up, and with each answer more questions arose. Bernd pushed for the truth, but Maltese authorities remained tight-lipped, insisting a tourist must have stolen Mike's belongings and brushing off any suspicions. It wasn't until April 2018, nearly 2 years later, that Bernd was finally given access to the full case file. Yet, the official conclusion remained unchanged. Mike had simply fallen. German prosecutors suggested trees might have softened the impact of his fall, explaining the lack of severe injuries. But this still didn't explain the missing organs or the conflicting reports. determined to uncover the truth, Bernd returned to Malta time and time again, demanding answers. In 2021, he even took legal action to push for a European investigation order. And yet, to this day, the mystery remains. What really happened to Mike Mansholt? On June 14, 1969, the Martin family, William, his wife, and their 2 sons, Dennis and his older brother, set off for a camping trip in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, hoping for a peaceful escape from city life. They arrived at Spence Field, where they pitched their tents and enjoyed the fresh mountain air. As the afternoon unfolded, Dennis and his brother joined 2 other boys for a game of hide-and-seek. Laughter echoed through the campsite as they plotted a playful prank to surprise the adults. At around 4:30 p.m., Dennis, wearing a bright red shirt, dashed into the trees while the others scattered. Moments later, the older boys reappeared, giggling over their successful trick, except Dennis never emerged from his hiding spot. At first, William Martin called out to his son, expecting him to come running, but as minutes passed and there was no response, unease crept in. While the Martins frantically searched for Dennis about 7 miles away, Harold Key and his family were hiking near Sea Branch when they heard a chilling scream cut through the forest. Moments later, they spotted a shadowy figure darting through the trees. Something about its movements unsettled them, but they had no idea their eerie encounter might be linked to a missing child. Back at Spence Field, worry turned into full-blown panic. As the sun set, darkness swallowed the forest, making the search even more difficult. At 8:30 p.m., a desperate William Martin reported his son's disappearance to park officials at Cades Cove. Just when things couldn't get worse, a thunderstorm rolled in, drenching the area with heavy rain and fierce winds. Still, searchers pressed on through the night, determined to find Dennis. By the next morning, the search had grown into a massive operation with over 240 volunteers, including park rangers, local Boy Scouts, and concerned hikers, combing the rugged terrain. Days passed, but no sign of Dennis was found, and theories about his fate began to emerge. Some believed he had simply wandered too far and was unable to survive in the wilderness. Others feared he had been attacked by a bear or a wild boar. The most unsettling theory, however, was that Dennis had been abducted. William Martin himself leaned toward this possibility, especially after learning about the unknown man spotted fleeing the woods near the time of Dennis's disappearance. The FBI and park rangers investigated the sighting, but no concrete evidence linked it to the case. On July 3rd, searchers came across a disturbing clue, a strong odor of decay near the west prong. Hopes of a breakthrough surged, but despite thorough investigation, no remains were found. The Martin family even offered a $5,000 reward for information, but it led nowhere. After months of relentless searching, park officials officially ended the hunt on September 11th. Then, in 1985, a ginseng hunter came forward, claiming he had found a child's skeletal remains 3 miles from Dennis's last known location. Investigators rushed to check, but once again, nothing was found. Decades later, Dennis Martin's disappearance remains one of the most haunting mysteries of the Great Smoky Mountains, an unsolved case that continues to spark speculation, debate, and heartache. The African wilderness is breathtaking, yet unforgiving. One wrong step, one miscalculation, and the wild reminds you who is truly in control. In 2018, a 22-year-old woman learned this in the most horrifying way imaginable. What was meant to be a casual visit to a South African game reserve turned into a nightmare, a chilling moment where human curiosity met nature's raw and lethal power. She wasn't supposed to be there. The woman, whose identity was never publicly revealed, had accompanied a friend to a lion sanctuary on the 3,200-acre Dinokeng Big 5 game reserve, just outside Pretoria. The visit was informal. She was tagging along while her friend interviewed the camp's manager for an assignment. The reserve was home to Kevin Richardson, the so-called Lion Whisperer, a world-renowned conservationist who had forged an incredible bond with some of the most powerful predators on Earth. For the woman, this was a rare chance to see lions up close, majestic, awe-inspiring creatures in their natural environment. But what she didn't know was that something was already in motion, something deadly. On that fateful day, Kevin Richardson had taken 3 of his lions out for their routine walk. It was part of their exercise and stimulation regimen, a controlled interaction between man and beast that Richardson had done countless times before. Everything seemed normal. The lions, powerful yet familiar, strolled through the reserve as Richardson and a colleague monitored them closely. Then, everything changed in an instant. A lioness, sleek and muscular, locked eyes on her target. An impala, a swift and delicate antelope, had entered the clearing. The lioness's instincts kicked in. Without hesitation, she exploded into a full-speed chase, her powerful muscles rippling as she pursued the terrified prey. But somewhere along that pursuit, the chase veered off course. The impala darted, zigzagging through the landscape. The lioness, fully consumed by the thrill of the hunt, followed, covering a staggering 2 to 2.5 kilometers in mere moments. And then, she encountered something unexpected. The young woman. She had been standing outside the fenced area of the camp, blissfully unaware of the approaching danger. She and her friend had been snapping photos, capturing the raw beauty of the African wilderness. She never saw it coming. The lioness did. There was no time to react. Before the woman could turn, before she could even scream, the lioness struck. With a force that could shatter bones, the massive predator pounced, knocking her to the ground. The world went silent for a split second, then erupted into shrieks of terror. Her friend stood frozen in horror, watching the attack unfold. The lioness, driven by primal instinct, did what apex predators do. Teeth sank into flesh, claws tore through skin. It was over in moments. Her lifeless body lay still, the golden brown predator towering over her, breathing heavily, blood staining its powerful jaws. The African bush, once peaceful, was now eerily silent. Paramedics raced to the scene, their sirens piercing through the stillness of the reserve. Desperate efforts were made to save her, but the injuries were catastrophic. Nick Dahlman, a paramedic spokesman, would later describe the scene as horrific. The injuries were very severe, he said. It was a deadly attack. Her friend, though physically unharmed, was in a state of complete shock. The nightmare had played out right in front of her eyes, and she could do nothing to stop it. Kevin Richardson was devastated. This wasn't a rogue attack. The lioness hadn't hunted the woman out of malice. She had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Richardson took to social media to express his sorrow. "I am devastated, and my heart goes out to this young woman's family," he wrote. He explained that his team had sent out notifications that they were walking the lions that day, as they always did. The lioness had been chasing an impala. This was not supposed to happen. Dinokeng management was quick to clarify. The lion involved in this fatality was not one of the wild, free-roaming lions of the Dinokeng Game Reserve, but that didn't matter. A woman was dead. The tragedy cast a dark shadow over Richardson's sanctuary. His reputation as the lion whisperer, a man who had spent his life building trust with these apex predators, was suddenly under scrutiny. Just weeks before the attack, supermodel Cara Delevingne had posed with one of Richardson's lions for a glamorous photo shoot at the sanctuary. In a heartfelt post, she had called the experience humbling, marveling at the chance to see such magnificent creatures up close. Now, that same world of intimate encounters and breathtaking beauty had revealed its darker, more brutal side. Visitors still come to Richardson's camp. They still take safari drives, still pay to volunteer and experience the thrill of being near some of the world's most powerful predators. But the woman's death serves as a chilling warning. In the wild, even the most experienced handlers know, lions do not reason. They do not hesitate. They do not forgive mistakes. One moment of distraction, one misstep, one wrong place at the wrong time, and in the blink of an eye, you become the hunted. Kyle Barrow was the kind of guy who lived for good times, always up for a laugh, never one to turn down an adventure with friends. But despite his outgoing nature, the 27-year-old from Oldham, Manchester had never traveled outside the UK, not once. He had spent years dreaming about packing his bags and heading somewhere exciting, but life always seemed to get in the way. That was until a spontaneous opportunity came knocking, thanks to his best friend of 10 years, Cal. Was this trip planned months in advance? Absolutely not. It was a last-minute, why not decision. The best kind, really. They weren't even sure why they picked Turkey of all places. Maybe it was the beaches, maybe it was the adventure sports, or maybe they just liked the sound of it. Either way, they were going, and they were going big. Jet skiing? Check. Parasailing? Definitely. Laughing until their stomachs hurt? Guaranteed. This was their chance to finally tick off some bucket list items and make memories they'd be telling stories about for years. On June 6, 2023, Kyle and Cal landed in Turkey, buzzing with excitement. They headed straight to Manavgat, a place famous for its waterfalls, scenic views, and just the right amount of chaos for two guys looking for an adventure. The plan was simple: have the time of their lives. The next day, in true tourist fashion, they decided to explore the town like locals, on mopeds. Seemed like a great idea at the time. There was just one small problem. Kyle had never ridden one before. No experience, no training, and, crucially, no helmet. But when you're on holiday, logic often takes a back seat to excitement. So, off they went, cruising through the streets, the warm breeze in their hair, feeling like kings of the road. Cal led the way, Kyle followed closely behind, and for a while, everything was perfect. At one point, Cal checked his mirror and saw Kyle laughing. Clearly, he was loving every second. But when he glanced back again, Kyle was gone. Just gone. Panic set in. Cal immediately turned around and retraced their path, his heart racing. And then he saw it. Kyle, lying motionless in the road, blood pooling around him. It was a sight Cal would never forget. His best friend, who had been laughing just moments ago, was now at the center of a nightmare. A lorry had stopped nearby, leading Cal to suspect it had something to do with the crash. But the details were hazy. What exactly had happened? Had Kyle lost control? Had he hit something? The questions raced through Cal's mind as he ran to his friend's side, screaming for help. Cars passed by, but no one stopped. It was as if the world had kept moving, while theirs had come to a standstill. Then, finally, an ambulance arrived. Relief, right? Not quite. In what can only be described as a shocking moment, a paramedic took one look at Kyle and then drove off without helping him. Yes, drove off. Cal couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was left on the roadside, helpless, holding on to his best friend and praying for another ambulance to show up. 15 agonizing minutes later, help finally arrived, and Kyle was rushed to the hospital. Doctors did everything they could, but his injuries were severe. Cal, pacing the hospital halls, made the gut-wrenching call to Kyle's family, hoping for a miracle. But despite all efforts, Kyle didn't make it. A post-mortem conducted by Dr. Emil Salmo confirmed multiple injuries, including a fractured spine. Local police claimed Kyle had crashed into a palm tree, something Cal immediately doubted. It didn't add up. Whatever had truly happened that day remained unclear. The only certainty was that Kyle's life had been tragically cut short. Getting him home wasn't easy. His family, girlfriend Hannah, and friends had to crowdfund to cover the cost of flying him back and arranging his funeral. The financial burden was heavy, but their determination was stronger. They weren't about to let Kyle's story end without a proper farewell. Tributes poured in from all corners. Friends described him as a legend, the guy who brought everyone together, the one who could turn even the dullest night into an unforgettable one. Some even got tattoos in his honor, because what better way to keep his memory alive than by permanently inking it on their skin? Kyle's trip was supposed to be about adventure, laughter, and crossing things off his bucket list. Instead, it became a heartbreaking reminder of how fragile life can be. But if there's one thing his friends and family made sure of, it's that Kyle's legacy didn't end on that road in Turkey. It lives on in the stories, the laughter, and the memories of a man who truly knew how to live. It was supposed to be just another peaceful fishing trip, a father and son bonding over the thrill of reeling in the perfect catch. But for 12-year-old Garrett Bardsley, that morning at Kuberant Lake in Utah's rugged wilderness would be his last known moment before disappearing without a trace. Garrett and his father, Kevin, were part of a larger Boy Scout group, 18 boys and about 6 or 7 adults, enjoying a weekend of adventure in the Uinta Mountains. Like any eager young fisherman, Garrett was determined to snag a big one. Unfortunately, fishing can be a messy business, and before long, his socks, pants, and shoes were soaked through. Uncomfortable in his wet clothes, he decided to make a quick trip back to their campsite, just 250 feet away, to change. He assured his father that he'd be back in no time, ready to land a fish for breakfast. The campsite, Quadrant number 4, was up a hill, a short and familiar walk the group had taken multiple times before. It was a routine trek, nothing dangerous or unusual. So, Kevin watched as his son trudged off, thinking nothing of it and focusing back on his fishing. But minutes turned into 20 and Garrett was still nowhere to be seen. That's when a sinking feeling crept in. Concerned, Kevin packed up his fishing gear and made his way back to camp, expecting to find Garrett there. Maybe distracted by something or chatting with the other scouts. But when he arrived, his heart dropped. Garrett wasn't there. Even worse, none of the other boys had seen him. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Panic set in fast. Kevin wasted no time sounding the alarm, alerting the rest of the group and calling in authorities. What followed was one of the largest search efforts in the area's history. Hundreds of searchers, both official and volunteer, poured into the wilderness, scouring every possible route Garrett could have taken. They searched on foot, on horseback, and even used trained search dogs, hoping for any sign of the missing boy. As the search stretched into the night of Sunday, August 21st, hope remained high. Maybe he had just wandered too far and would turn up tired, hungry, but otherwise fine. But as days passed with no sign of him, optimism faded. The only clue? A single Nike sock, Garrett's, discovered about half a mile away in a rugged boulder field. The sock was damp and wadded up, as if someone had pulled it off a wet foot. But beyond that, there was nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no signs of struggle, just silence. After 9 grueling days, the official search was called off, but Garrett's family refused to give up. Devoted friends and volunteers kept searching well into October, making trips back at least twice a week, desperate for answers. Even after the brutal winter of 2004, they returned in the spring to search again. Yet, despite every effort, no further clues ever surfaced. The mystery of Garrett Bardsley has since become the subject of intense speculation. Some believe he fell victim to a wild animal, perhaps a mountain lion or a bear. Others suspect foul play, suggesting he may have been abducted by a stranger, or even someone known to the group. Another theory is that he got lost or injured in the unforgiving terrain, unable to call for help. But with no evidence to confirm any of these ideas, all we're left with is speculation. Years later, Garrett's disappearance remains one of Utah's most perplexing mysteries. His story continues to raise awareness about missing children and the unpredictable dangers of the wilderness. A dream birthday, a peaceful river safari, and then pure terror erupting from the depths. It was December 1st, 2018, Kristen Yaldor's 37th birthday. She and her husband, Ryan, had set out for what was supposed to be a relaxing canoe trip down Zimbabwe's Zambezi River, a place known for its breathtaking beauty and rich wildlife. The guided tour promised calm waters and stunning photo opportunities near Victoria Falls, but nature had other plans. They had barely begun when one of the guides called out, a warning lost in the stillness of the river. Something massive surged from below. In an instant, their canoe lurched violently, flipping over as if it had been struck by an underwater explosion. Before Kristen could react, she was in the water. Gasping, disoriented, she surfaced just in time to see Ryan desperately swimming toward the shore. She was almost there too, just 5 strokes away from safety. But then it happened. A force like a wrecking ball clamped onto her right leg and yanked her under. The pain hadn't hit yet. Shock, adrenaline, survival instincts. The water churned as the unseen monster rag-dolled her side to side, its massive jaws crushing down like a hydraulic press. She had dived with sharks before. She knew not to panic. Hold your breath. Stay calm. She reached for the creature's jaw, her fingers brushing against its rough, prehistoric skin. For a moment, it loosened its grip. Was she free? Had she scared it off? Then, agony. Kristen clawed her way to the riverbank, her broken leg sending white-hot pain through her body. The severity of her injuries was unknown, but the crimson stain spreading into the water told her everything she needed to know. A guide wrapped a tourniquet around her leg. Ryan, hands shaking, tried to call for help. Across the river, tourists, safe in their vehicles, had stopped watching animals. Now, they were watching her. Kristen borrowed Ryan's phone. She dialed home. It was 2 a.m. in Florida, but her mother answered. "Do you want me to sing you happy birthday?" "No, Mom," Kristen whispered. "I got attacked by a hippo. For those who have never seen a hippo up close, its bite is the stuff of nightmares. Its jaws open to a horrifying 150-degree angle, revealing 3 dozen dagger-like teeth, including massive canines designed to crush bone and tear through flesh. A hippo's bite force is strong enough to snap a canoe in half, and it had nearly done just that. Kristen survived. But the scars, physical and psychological, would last forever. The Zambezi had given her a birthday she would never forget, and a reason to never trust calm waters again. In the summer of 2017, Bakari Henderson was ready to celebrate, big time. Fresh out of the University of Arizona with a degree in finance and entrepreneurship, this 22-year-old from Austin, Texas, was about to launch his own clothing line. But before diving into the business world, he wanted one last carefree adventure. And what better place than Zakynthos, Greece? This dreamy island in the Ionian Sea was famous for its crystal-clear waters, hidden cliff diving spots, and legendary nightlife. It was the perfect setting for a well-earned vacation with his friends. One last epic trip before adulthood came knocking. From the moment they arrived, Bakari and his crew were living it up. They spent their days exploring secret cliff-jumping spots, soaking up the sun, and making the kind of memories that last a lifetime. Bakari was the glue that held the group together, the guy who always had a smile, always had your back, and could turn any situation into a good time. But as much as he loved traveling, there was something deeper to it. Being a young black man in America came with its own set of challenges, but overseas, he felt free, like he could just exist without worrying about the invisible rules that seemed to follow him back home. One night, after another adrenaline-fueled day, Bakari and his friends decided to hit up Laganas, the island's ultimate party zone. This place was packed with bars, clubs, and tourists from all over the world, all looking for a night they'd never forget. The energy was electric, and the group was ready to let loose. At one of the clubs, a Serbian waitress invited them inside, and Bakari struck up a casual conversation with her. They even took a selfie together, just an innocent moment, or so it seemed. But not everyone saw it that way. A nearby Serbian man took offense, his face twisting with anger. He couldn't believe she was talking to a black man, and he wasn't about to let it slide. Things escalated fast. The man started shouting, his rage attracting attention. More men, mostly Serbians, along with a Greek and a British citizen, quickly got involved. One threw a punch, then another. Suddenly, Bakari was fighting off multiple attackers. Realizing he was outnumbered, he tried to escape, sprinting out of the club, but they chased him down. In a horrifying scene caught on CCTV, about 10 men surrounded him, beating him mercilessly. They punched and kicked his head repeatedly, never giving him a chance to defend himself. By the time his friends reached him, it was too late. Bakari was gone. In the aftermath, 9 men were identified and put on trial. But justice? That was another story. In 2018, none were convicted of murder. Instead, 6 were found guilty of the lesser charge of deadly assault, and 3 walked free. For Bakari's family, it was a devastating blow. A Greek prosecutor agreed and called for a retrial, something possible in Greece, where double jeopardy laws don't apply as they do in the U.S. Even Kamala Harris took notice, discussing the case with Greece's prime minister. But the retrial faced delay after delay, and by 2022 the verdict remained unchanged. 5 of the convicted men had already been released, and the last one soon followed. For Bakari's loved ones, the fight for justice continues, but the question remains, how could something so senseless happen, and how could those responsible walk away so easily? In the summer of 2015, the Kuntz family set off for what seemed like a simple camping trip to Timber Creek Campground, a quiet retreat hidden deep in the Idaho wilderness. It was supposed to be a peaceful getaway, just a family enjoying the great outdoors. But what started as a routine adventure soon spiraled into a baffling mystery. Along for the trip were Vernal Kuntz and Jessica Mitchell, their lively 2-year-old son, Deor Kuntz Jr., Jessica's grandfather, Bob Walton, and Isaac Rainwand, a man whose presence added an air of mystery to the whole excursion. On the evening of July 9th, the group packed up their truck and hit the road, making their way through the rugged terrain. Along the way, they stopped for diesel, attempted to grab dinner in town but had no luck, and ended up settling for snacks from a convenience store before finally reaching the campsite in the dark. Little Deor, eager to help, assisted his parents in setting up camp and building a fire before the family turned in for the night, blissfully unaware of the nightmare that was about to unfold. The next morning started off like any other camping trip. The group lounged around the campsite, soaking in the peaceful atmosphere. At one point, Jessica asked her grandfather, Bob Walton, to keep an eye on Deor, while she and Vernal took a short walk around the area with Isaac. It should have been a simple request, one that any parent makes without a second thought. But by 2 p.m., their world was turned upside down. While fishing with Isaac, Jessica and Vernal suddenly realized that their son was nowhere to be seen. Panic set in as they rushed back to the campsite, calling his name and frantically searching the surrounding area. At 2:22 p.m., Vernal called 911, with Jessica making another desperate call at 2:26 p.m. Authorities were alerted at 2:28 p.m., and by 3:45 p.m., search and rescue teams arrived. What followed was a massive effort to locate the missing toddler. For 2 weeks, rescue teams scoured the rugged terrain using ATVs, helicopters, horses, K-9 units, and even drones. Despite their exhaustive efforts, there was no sign of Deor, not a footprint, not a shred of clothing, nothing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Then, in a shocking turn of events, 6 months later in January 2016, the Lemhi County Sheriff's Office dropped a bombshell. Vernal Kuntz and Jessica Mitchell were officially named as suspects in their son's disappearance. Suspicion had been growing due to inconsistencies in their statements, and private investigator Philip Klein, who had been hired by the family, uncovered some troubling details. Both parents had undergone multiple polygraph tests, with Vernal reportedly failing 5 and Jessica failing 4. The inconsistencies in their stories, combined with the failed lie detector tests, raised serious questions about what really happened to Deor. Klein speculated that the child might have been the victim of foul play, whether accidental or intentional, and even accused Jessica of knowing more than she was letting on. The case grew even stranger when, in 2016, the couple was evicted from their home for unpaid rent. Among the abandoned belongings, investigators found Deor's camouflage jacket, the very one he was supposedly wearing when he disappeared. This discovery only deepened the mystery and fueled further suspicion. Despite all these strange twists, no arrests were ever made, and Deor Kuntz Jr.'s disappearance remains an unsolved mystery. Vernal and Jessica separated in 2016, with Jessica eventually remarrying, but both have continued to insist they had nothing to do with their son's vanishing act. To this day, the case remains wide open, with no answers and no closure for the little boy who seemingly disappeared without a trace. The Timber Creek Campground, once just a peaceful escape, is now forever linked to one of Idaho's most baffling missing person case. A split-second decision, a predator lying in wait, a tragedy that unfolded in front of horrified onlookers. On a scorching day in July 2016, a family's trip to Badaling Wildlife Park in Beijing took a terrifying and deadly turn. The park, known for its drive-through safari experience, allows visitors to observe Siberian tigers up close from the supposed safety of their vehicles. But one simple mistake, one moment of letting their guard down, turned a routine drive into a horrific nightmare caught on camera. It all began with an argument. Inside their car, tensions flared between a woman, later identified as Zhao, and her companions. Frustrated, she did something unthinkable. She opened the car door and stepped out into the tiger enclosure, oblivious to the danger lurking just beyond the tree line. She barely had time to react. From the shadows, a massive Siberian tiger exploded into motion. With lightning speed, the 400-pound predator lunged, clamping its powerful jaws onto Zhao's body and dragging her away before anyone could intervene. Screams filled the air. Panic erupted inside the car. A man and another woman, later identified as Zhao's mother, jumped out, desperate to save her. But in the wild, no act of heroism goes unpunished. As Zhao's mother sprinted toward her daughter, a second tiger struck. This one was even faster, stronger, and more brutal. The massive beast took her down with bone-crushing force, mauling her in front of the helpless onlookers. Unlike Zhao, she would not survive. Surveillance cameras captured everything. The footage, later leaked onto social media, showed the horrifying attack unfold in real time. The sheer force of the tiger's ambush was enough to leave even seasoned wildlife experts stunned. Viewers watched in disbelief as the animals dragged their victims into the underbrush, disappearing from sight. By the time park officials and emergency responders arrived, it was too late. Zhao, though critically injured, had miraculously survived the attack. Her mother, however, had been mauled to death, her selfless attempt to save her daughter costing her everything. In the aftermath, questions swirled. Park rules clearly stated that visitors must remain inside their vehicles at all times, windows up, doors locked. Yet, Zhao claimed she never knew what she had signed before entering the park. She later stated that she believed the form was a standard entry registration, not an agreement that explicitly warned of the danger. To make matters worse, Zhao accused the park of failing to intervene. She alleged that a park official, stationed in a nearby vehicle, failed to come to her rescue, a claim that sparked outrage across China. The tragedy served as a grim reminder of the unforgiving nature of the wild. Siberian tigers are among the most lethal predators on Earth, capable of taking down prey many times their size. Once they lock onto a target, there is no escape. A simple mistake, a fatal miscalculation, and a mother who gave her life in a desperate bid to save her daughter from the jaws of death. The tiger enclosure at Battling Wildlife Park remains open, but those who pass through now do so with a chilling awareness. One wrong move could mean the difference between life and death. In November 2014, 23-year-old Sylvia Rochelle was finally living her dream. Born and raised in Lublin, Poland, she had spent years fantasizing about visiting Spain. She wasn't just a casual admirer. She had passionately studied the language, eagerly waiting for the day she could stroll through the Spanish streets and immerse herself in the culture she adored. And now, that day had arrived. Seville, the heart of Andalusia, was everything she had imagined. Charming, vibrant, and filled with history. But for Sylvia, this wasn't just a quick vacation. As a dedicated medical student on an Erasmus scholarship at the University of Almeria, she had bigger plans. She dreamed of one day moving to Spain and working as a nurse. This trip was just a glimpse into her future. Sylvia was radiant, long black hair, striking blue eyes, and a smile that could light up a room. She was the kind of person who was always up for an adventure, always eager to experience life to the fullest. So when she found herself at Puente de Triana, one of Seville's most famous landmarks, she knew she had to capture the moment. The 19th century metal arch bridge offered breathtaking views of the city, making it a prime spot for tourists. And what do tourists love more than anything? Selfies. Sylvia was no different. Wanting the perfect shot, she climbed onto the metal ledge of the bridge, carefully positioning herself for that one unforgettable photo. But in a heartbreaking instant, everything changed. As she balanced on the edge, her foot slipped. Before she could react, she fell backward, plunging 15 feet onto the concrete footing below. Bystanders gasped in horror, immediately calling for an ambulance. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but the situation was dire. Sylvia had suffered a fractured skull and was already in cardiac arrest. They managed to revive her and rushed her to the Hospital of Traumatology, fighting to save her life. But her injuries were too severe. Despite their best efforts, Sylvia Rachel passed away, leaving behind shattered dreams and a heartbroken family. Her parents were devastated. Their daughter had been so full of life, ambition, and love for Spain, only for her journey to be tragically cut short. But Sylvia's story didn't just leave her family grieving, it also left the city of Seville reflecting on safety measures. Her accident prompted authorities to rethink pedestrian safety, particularly along the city's scenic boulevards. While nothing could undo the tragedy, her story served as a reminder of the risks people take for the perfect photo. In the end, Sylvia's dream of experiencing Spain came true, but at a heartbreaking cost. It was Labor Day weekend in 1975, and the Newton family from Manchester, Maine, was soaking up the great outdoors at Natanis Point Campground. Nestled deep in the woods near the Canadian border, it was the perfect spot for some classic camping fun: s'mores, campfires, and lazy afternoons by the water. No one could have imagined that this peaceful getaway would soon turn into one of the largest search and rescue missions Maine had ever seen. On the morning of September 1st, Ron Newton hopped into his pickup truck and rumbled off to gather firewood, assuming it would be a quick errand. But his 4-year-old son, Kurt, had other plans. Not wanting to be left behind, the little guy grabbed his trusty red tricycle and pedaled after his dad, his tiny legs pumping furiously as he followed the dusty road. Enter Lou Ellen Hansen, a 13-year-old girl from a neighboring campsite who happened to spot Kurt zooming past. She called out to him, but the determined toddler kept on trucking, completely focused on catching up to his dad. Meanwhile, Jack Hansen, Lou Allen's father and the campground's caretaker, was making his usual rounds when he stumbled upon a red tricycle abandoned near the campground's dump. Not thinking much of it, he did what any groundskeeper might do. He tossed it onto the trash heap and went about his day. Back at the campsite, Jill Newton, Kurt's mom, was scrubbing mud off his sneakers when she suddenly realized he was nowhere in sight. At first, she figured he must be nearby, but after asking a few campers if they'd seen him, the sinking feeling in her stomach started to grow. When Ron returned and confirmed Kurt hadn't been with him, panic set in. Desperate, they ran into Jack Hansen and asked if he had seen their son, specifically a little boy riding a red tricycle. Jack's face must have said it all. "The tricycle?" he responded. "Yeah, I saw it, but no kid." When he led them to the dump, there it was, tossed onto the trash pile like a forgotten toy. But Kurt was gone. What followed was a massive search effort, unlike anything Maine had seen before. First, the Newtons and fellow campers scoured the area, calling Kurt's name and checking every possible hiding spot. Then, authorities arrived, bringing in game wardens, tracking dogs, and even helicopters equipped with loudspeakers to blast Kurt's name through the dense forest. As the search stretched on, Jill Newton overheard volunteers discussing high-tech aircraft used in the Vietnam War, planes designed to detect heat signatures from great heights. If they could find enemy soldiers in the jungle, surely they could find a lost little boy in the Maine woods, right? Without hesitation, she pushed for one of these planes to be brought in. The state acted quickly, flying in the specialized aircraft from Florida, hoping for a miracle. But no miracle came. Days passed, and despite thousands of volunteers combing the woods, Kurt was nowhere to be found. His mother, refusing to give up, even dug into a deep hole in the forest that looked like the perfect hiding spot for a scared child. But it was empty. By September 12th, after 10 grueling days, the official search ended. Over 3,000 people had scoured every inch of the wilderness, yet not a single clue surfaced. Theories ran wild. Some believed Kurt had simply gotten lost, wandering deeper into the woods and away from the campsite. Given the freezing nighttime temperatures, survival would have been nearly impossible. But Kurt's parents had a different theory, one far more unsettling. What if their son hadn't been lost at all? What if he had been kidnapped? With the Canadian border so close, they feared he might have been taken across into Quebec. Determined to chase this possibility, they flooded Quebec with missing child posters, even translating them into French to reach more people. Sadly, their search yielded no solid leads. To this day, the disappearance of Kurt Newton remains one of Maine's most haunting unsolved mysteries. The little blonde-haired boy who set off on his tricycle that morning was never seen again.